On this episode of Airbrushing with Aaron, we're not going to be doing any airbrushing. We are going to be doing something that's equally important to finishing your models, and that's applying decals. It's actually one of my favorite parts of building models because it's the moment when your piece of painted plastic starts to look like the real thing. To get started, let's take a look at the tools you'll need. You'll need a dedicated pair of scissors to cut the decals out of the sheet, a sharp knife to trim away excess clear film, a pair of tweezers. I like to use two different pairs, a flat head to hold the decals in the water, and a sharp pair for really small decals, a set of brushes to brush on water and setting solutions, and most important of all, a whole bunch of cotton swabs to sop away excess film and move the decals on the model. Those are the basic tools, but you'll need a few other things before you actually start putting decals on, including a paper towel, a cup with some warm water, and decal setting solutions. Decal setting solutions come in many different varieties and often in different strengths, so it's a good idea to test them before you use them. My go-to is always FineScale's Microset and Microsol. There's also GSI Krios's Mr. Mark Setter and Mr. Mark Softer. There are some one-part solutions here that are just applied after the decals are on. Tamiya has one, and then the always favorite Walther's Solvaset. This one's particularly strong, and it's always a last resort if you can't get a decal to settle down. So I just recently built Tamiya's 1/72nd scale Ki-61 Tony, and I'm going to apply some decals. The nice thing about this kit is it has some colorful Japanese decals, and they also sell a separate set for the camouflage pattern. That's going to be a real challenge for later. But first, let's apply the markings on the wings that have to go under the camouflage. These kit decals are really well printed, and one of the things that's nice about them is that they have minimized the amount of carrier film or clear film around the decals. So they're very easy to cut out without having to do a lot of extra trimming. Then I'm going to dip the decal in some water and hold it in there for just a few seconds. They do not need to be submerged for a long period of time. I'm going to put the decal down on a piece of paper and let it blot off the excess water while the water is activating the adhesive. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and set up the surface with a little Microset. This helps to wet the surface down and make it easier for the decal to settle. Since the model's a little unstable on the table, I'm going to use a foam block to prop up the wing I'm working on. To see if the decal's ready for application, I'm going to use and see it slides nice and easily. The reason I'm using a cotton swab and not my finger is decals have a tendency to stick to your finger, and there's nothing more frustrating than trying to peel it off while you're trying to get it on the model. To apply it, I simply align it about where it needs to be. And again, using the cotton swab, I just slide it off the paper out from under the decal. And then I can use the cotton swab to align it with the outline of the flaps. And once you have the decal exactly where it needs to go, again, here's where the cotton swabs are so essential. You can roll, and that's important that you roll it across the decal to remove any excess fluid caught under the film. And then finally, once you've got the decal in place and the excess water gone, you can apply a little solvent. This is what softens the decal and allows it to settle into the recessed panel lines and around other details. And you just really want to touch this on. You don't want to brush too much because you don't want to risk moving the decal. Now, it's important not to touch that decal while that solvent is on there and working. It'll soften it, and it'll actually look like it's wrinkling a little bit, but if you touch it, it's going to distort and ruin the decal, so leave it alone. So I have several more decals like that to apply to the upper wings before the large camouflage decals. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So we're back after that interlude, letting these decals dry, and we're going to do the big camouflage pieces next. Something I forgot to mention earlier is the way to ensure your decals go on without a problem is to have a gloss surface to apply them to. So before I started this process, I airbrushed the model with Tamiya clear acrylic and let that set up overnight. That provides a smooth, glossy surface that's perfect for decals to go down on without silvering. All right, so I'm going to start with the starboard wing. around the decal here, just like you do everything else. Into the water as usual. Do its thing, set it aside. So I'm going to prep the starboard wing with some microset. This shouldn't lift those decals as long as they're good and dry. I'm going to violate my cardinal rule here and use my finger because I can't get this to move around very well. On a big decal like this, sticking to your finger is a little less likely than it is on small scales, so I feel confident doing this here. As you can see, these decals are laying straight down over the decals we applied earlier, the flap and ammunition bay markings. This camouflage was sprayed in the field and it would have been applied over the stencils that were applied at the factory. One of the things I'm trying to work out here is getting all the wrinkles and air bubbles out and getting any fluid that's trapped underneath the film out so that the decal lays down properly. Now to help it settle down, and this is useful with large decals like this, I'm going to use a hairdryer. The heat works very much like if you ever played with shrinky dinks. The heat shrinks the plastic up a little bit and tightens it down over the space, as well as evaporating any water that might be on the surface. I can see already that I've got a couple little bubbles with either fluid or air trapped under them. So I'm going to take the tip of a new number 11 blade and just prick the film just to let that escape. That allows the plastic to settle back down. And just roll over the affected areas with the Q-tip again. And use the hairdryer. So now the real challenge is going to be getting this flat decal to fit this curved side of the fuselage. Let's see how that goes. All right, now since I've got that lined up, now I'm going to hit it with the hairdryer before it moves. So, I've shown you ways that you can put decals over one another to get layered finishes without using an airbrush, as well as all the different tools and techniques that you can use to help them settle over complex surfaces. On this episode of Airbrushing with Aaron, we're not going to be doing any airbrushing, but we're going to do... Let's talk about the tools you need to me a clear acrylic. To me a clear gloss, to me a clear X22 Is he okay?